Number one, strong retail sales and possible rate cuts.
All right, so Rob, the chart that we have here actually came from Michael Shedlock, who is the coolest economist I know. He goes by Mish. Right, we have the only economist with a mononym. He runs the fantastic Mish Talk blog. I highly recommend it for everyone. Mishtalk.com. He is also a member of the Deep Knowledge Investing Board of Advisors. He has put out a chart pointing out the very, very close correlation, almost perfect correlation between final retail sales and expectations for GDP, the GDPNow forecast. We've talked about that before. And if you think about it, it makes a lot of sense. When people are spending money, the economy is good. When people are spending less money, you're going to have lower sales, lower GDP growth. So what we had here was real final sales improving, climbing from 1.3% to 1.7%. So a pretty decent number. And because of that, the nowcast, which is the expectation for the future GDP report, rose from 2% to 2.5%. We've had a lot of debates, Rob, on this channel about whether the economy is in good shape or bad shape, whether we're going to see GDP growth or not. A 2.5% number, if they're right, and they do change these expectations pretty frequently, but a 2.5% number would be considered good.
Gary, you've mentioned that this economic strength and the takeaway might complicate the case for the Fed in regards to a rate cut. The market is currently talking about a 98.1% probability of a rate cut in September. You think that still is not necessarily the case? I'm assuming even more so now taking the under. Can we talk more about why you're still taking that stance?
Sure. Well, first of all, Rob, we can't take the over when the number's right around 100%. Right? The
Good point.
probability of a rate cut isn't 150%.
A 98.1% probability too. When I saw that, that number stuck out to me. And the question, 98.1%, how do we get to such a high probability?
Yeah. So we had an interesting debate on this today. One of the things I love about running Deep Knowledge Investing are the interactions I have with people on my board of advisors. They are phenomenally smart people. They're subject matter experts, and every idea, whether it's my idea or their idea, is subject to discussion and debate. And Mish and I had an interesting exchange on Twitter or X today. Mish's view, and by the way, take this seriously because he does know his stuff. He is a really good economist, great writer, great thinker. Um, his view is we are absolutely certain to get a 25 basis point rate cut in September, and if that's not right, it'll be a 50 basis point cut. So he's thinking 25 to 50 basis points. His reasoning on that is he thinks the economy has already entered a recession.
Mm.
The part, so I agree with part, I disagree with part. The part where I agree with Mish is where he's talking about the economy being in bad shape. And this is something we've talked about a lot here, Rob, this bifurcated economy. We have an economy with a ton of government stimulus and it's creating inflation, and that works for a limited number of people. But most of the country is not doing great financially right now. To that end, I agree with Mish. I think he's got this nailed. But again, we've talked about a bifurcated economy, and part of what's happening is Congress is overspending by trillions of dollars. That is a massive amount of stimulus. The Treasury Department is monetizing it, which is a way of saying they're just, creating more debt. We're basically effectively creating more currency to cover all of this, and that's creating inflation. And so what I think is that while Mish is right, that the economy for most people is not in great shape, the aggregate numbers, which include wasteful government spending, even if it destroys value, are going to look pretty good. If we get, a 2.5% GDP print and the CPI remains above 3%, it's a question. To me, it's not 100% clear that Powell will be ready to cut in September. So it's one of these kind of interesting things where Mish and I both agree on the facts. He's more dovish on the Fed's path than I am. I am more hawkish, meaning looking at higher rates than the market is right now. Although, again, in fairness, when the market is expecting, 100% probability of a rate cut, it's pretty easy to say take the under on that because you can't take the over. So, we'll see what happens in a couple of months. But, mea culpa here. I fully admit that that's at this point, that's no longer a bold prediction that I'm making.
Do you and Mish have any sort of friendly wager?
No, we don't do that. We just like to discuss and debate this stuff. Sometimes we get on the phone and talk it out. Sometimes we share articles. Today we were, tweeting at each other or posting at each other on X. But I'll tell you, I've read his work for a decade and a half, and he's somebody whose opinion I take seriously. I think he's really good at what he does. Again, it's mishtalk.com. Mish is Mish. I recommend everyone go check it out. I'm a huge fan of his work.
Great stuff. And we'll definitely keep in tune, obviously, as we come up to the September date.